This is Live from the Table, a Comedy Cellar affiliated podcast. Coming at you on Sirius XM 99 Raw Dog and the Laugh Button Podcast Network. Dan Naturman here with Noam Dworman, owner of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, with Periel Aschenbrand, our producer, or whatever you want to call her. And, of course, we have Nikki Lyons, the sound engineer behind the scenes. You probably won't be talking, but she's there. And she is the backbone of this whole operation. Hello and a belated happy Halloween to everybody. I hope it was a good one. Hope it was scary and spooky and all those things. And candy-filled. A big week here at the Comedy Cellar, first of all. As many of you may know, comedian SNL alumni Chris Redd was assaulted right here at the Comedy Cellar in front of, just in front of the club. I was here, but I didn't see anything, and we wish him obviously a speedy recovery. I guess he was just somebody just came up and hit him as he was standing outside the club, ready to go on, and I guess there's been no motive determined for the assault. I know nothing.
I mean, I'm not like Colonel Klink. I really don't know anything. I don't know anything.
All right. Well, I guess there's not a lot to talk about there necessarily.
Well, the tabloids are
some people
attributing. Well, I don't know if it's true or not. But
I'll tell you something about it. One of the websites put down blah 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 blah, and we have there's no evidence whether or not it was a Comedy Cellar employee or not.
Who put that down?
They changed it, so I don't want to call them out by name, but like.
What? Well, you called them up and said, what the fuck?
Yeah, I called up and I tried to get my attorney on them. I was like, why would you inject that kind of doubt? There's nobody thinks it was a Comedy Cellar employee. She said, well, I thought because he was dressed like a security guard. I said, our guards don't wear uniforms, but even if they did, don't you think we'd know if one of our security guards punched? Like, it's such a stupid thing to say. Like, it just... They'll do
they're trying to, other people.
Press will do anything.
Other people have speculated that, one article I read said this happened. They didn't directly say it was linked, but they said this happens, shortly after Chris Redd it became known that he started dating Keenan's ex-wife or whatever it was. So they're implying perhaps that there was some sort of link there, but.
I think that's crazy too.
Yeah, just coming up with the stories that there's no evidence.
Well, but like
to suggest one way or the other.
More interesting click. I mean, it's clickbait, right? Like it's like, okay, we don't know who did it.
The whole story, pouring bleach on him, saying this is MAGA country. I'm not buying any of it.
So anyway, I guess he seems to be on the road to recovery, from what I've read. So.
Yeah, I hope so. It's a terrible. I mean, who knows what it was, but whatever it is, it's terrible.
Well, it certainly seemed like a targeted attack, not some random thing. But
I guess.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Well,
it seems that way.
It does. When you say it seems that way, it would imply that you know something about it. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I mean, it seems like from all of my years working at the FBI that if somebody had to know that he was going to go on exactly at that point and was waiting for him here.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Oh,
wow. I just don't like to. I mean,
wow.
I just think that I don't know. But so many times we've jumped to conclusions about so many stories. We just don't know. But probably, yeah. I mean, who's going to just punch Chris Redd on the street?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, someone who worked for me got punched on the street not long ago. You hear these.
But I think they were hanging out here for a while. Like
they were hanging out in wait?
I believe so, right?
I don't know. And also that they were dressed like a security guard.
Maybe they are a security guard. That's another thing. He was dressed like a security guard. Nobody ever said maybe he was a security guard.
Oh, could be. Not from here, but.
No, but just like they assumed it was not a security guard. Like
that's hilarious, actually.
She was dressed up as a nun.
Could be.
I don't know. It wasn't a nun. Anyway, yeah.
All right.
I'm feeling very, cynical, but it's a terrible. Our heart goes out to him, and we hope he's okay. I think he's okay. His stitches.
Speaking of security,
the law underpunishes violent crime. I mean, if they caught the guy who did this to him, unless the guy stole $100,000, they would treat it as a minor thing and let the guy out on the street the next day. I think this is crazy. People are traumatized by these violent crimes. And then there was this woman in Buffalo. You heard about that?
No.
I forget her name. You know, she had on video that her husband was kicking the shit out of her for like 7 or 8 minutes. He got arrested. They charged him with some kind of misdemeanor. There's no bail. He got out and killed her.
No.
Yeah, it's a big story now. It's probably not probably.
I mean, I think with domestic violence, this is something that they worry about more so because domestic violence, often it happens that way.
I feel like anybody who puts their hands on anybody should go to jail for a certain amount of time. I think people underestimate the risk of violent crime and the trauma of violent crime and the civilizational breakdown that violent crime
Well,
causes.
hopefully they find the guy. I mean, I assume if it was not a random crime, which it doesn't seem to be, there's a good chance they'll find him. I mean, Chris Redd obviously would know if indeed somebody out there means him harm, if he has any enemies, and I'm sure the police have interrogated him, and hopefully...
I don't know. If somebody was waiting for me, God forbid, and punched me, I wouldn't know who it was.
Well...
Why is that? Because so many people want to punch you?
No, because I'm sure there are people who would want to punch me for something I said or did or whatever it is. And I would... and I
right,
wouldn't
if it's something that he's politically motivated,
Right,
where
right.
he said something, tweeted something, or has a stance in his stand-up act, then that would, then maybe that would be harder to find the guy if that's what it was. If it was a personal vendetta, then they might be able to find him. Yeah. Or if they have an image of him on camera, but I believe he's wearing a mask, so there's not much to see.
Now, I have something I want to talk about. Do you have something else on your agenda?
Well, I was going to talk about Steve, but
okay, we can talk about Steve. Well, we'll talk about Steve after this. Maybe Rachel might want to chime in on Steve. This attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Yeah, I don't know much about that, but just get me up to date if you would.
Well, somebody, a crazy man, conspiracy theory believer, was angry at Nancy Pelosi for something political, I'm sure, and smashed her husband on the head. But anyway,
broke into her house, right? I mean,
yes,
it
broke into her house and hit her husband on the head with a hammer. 82-year-old man. He fractured his skull or something. It's terrible. So there was all these stories because Elon Musk, I mean, inexplicably, he'll never wash this off. Elon Musk tweeted out this conspiracy theory about this being Paul Pelosi's gay prostitute, like just crazy stuff.
Oh my God, I can't even.
But and on top of that, there's so much about this. But the most recent thing is the Washington Post had this whole story about the security that they had on Nancy Pelosi's house. They have, I guess it was in Washington, they have a mission control there with the house on camera with alarms. Like there's a whole system set up to protect the homes of... They didn't pick up on the guy. They weren't watching. The guy
It's
comes
outrageous.
in. Yeah. So well, you think it's outrageous, I guess, but it's people can't believe this. Like they will say, why don't you have a camera? It is the difference between executing security and getting a camera is like the difference between me putting a long division problem in front of you and you solving it. It's so difficult to make this stuff work. And this is why people who couldn't believe that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, they're so naive because there's such incompetence in this kind of stuff. Cameras are out. Nobody's watching the camera. If you can believe, and we know it's true, that nobody was watching Nancy Pelosi's home as a guy broke in and smashed the husband over the head with a hammer or whatever it is, you certainly should be able to believe that nobody's watching Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell to see if he was committing suicide. Get it? They're not watching. That's how he committed suicide. The same way Paul Pelosi got killed, that's how Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. So
he didn't get killed, Paul Pelosi.
Whatever, yeah. That's how Jeffrey... So everybody just needs to recalibrate why it is they thought that Jeffrey Epstein couldn't have committed suicide.
Well, I don't think you're going to convince any people that thought that because those people are generally conspiracy minded.
I'm not a conspiracy.
No, I know a lot of reasonable people like, well, on this one, I just can't believe he...
Yeah.
How could he commit suicide in a cell? They have cameras. Blah, blah. No.
I don't even think it was just because of that. I just think that I just don't think he committed suicide. The guy was like...
You don't think he committed?
No, I don't. We've had this conversation many times. I don't. Why do you think he committed suicide?
I believe he committed suicide, yes, because if he didn't commit suicide, there's a lot of people that had to be involved in the murder and cover-up.
Okay,
And,
why is that?
and
arguably?
nobody's talking, and the prison would have to be involved, the people who
Not necessarily. The prison wouldn't necessarily. Do you know how many people get killed in jail? Do you know how many powerful people had an interest in Jeffrey Epstein dying and never being able to say a word?
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, but he was set up for suicide. He's hanging. They found him hanging.
Yeah.
And
okay.
someone has to get in and out of his cell and hang him. First of all, how do you hang somebody that easily without a struggle? Like the whole thing is ridiculous to me. So
They could have immobilized him first.
yeah, maybe they might have had like a nerve agent.
Yeah.
They got.
and then you'd have to get the amount of people would have to be involved. The autopsy guy would have to be involved.
Okay. If he was paid off.
No, that's not true. The autopsy found evidence that it could have been either. As a matter of fact, I think one autopsy even implied that it wasn't suicide, but that was Michael Baden. You know, he's the autopsy for hire.
Only Noam would know the name of the guy who does autopsies for hire.
That's he was because he was in the OJ trial. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. And then something else has been bothering me about this Paul Pelosi. Now, I've been arguing with a friend of mine. He used to be a producer on MSNBC, and I like him. I know he listens to this podcast, and maybe he's right. But I've been very upset with the president of the United States because he came out and he blamed Republican rhetoric for this attack. And I'll stipulate that it could have been Republican rhetoric which brought the temperature up high enough that this crazy person acted on it. But what bothers me is that, did you know, Periel, it's a little news quiz. Did you know that that somebody is charged with attempted murder for showing up to kill Kavanaugh?
Did I know that somebody is what? Somebody.
What? Do you know? Let's start. Do you know who Kavanaugh is?
Shut up. Yes. Go
Who
on.
is he?
The rapist judge.
Yeah, he's the justice of the Supreme Court. So he had somebody show up at his house with a Glock and zip ties. And by the way, there were headlines about the zip ties here. Harkens back to
Okay.
somebody showed up. Somebody showed up outside his house with a Glock gun and zip ties. The police happened to catch him.
Yeah.
They stopped the guy, and he admitted he was there to kill Kavanaugh.
Okay.
The guy was charged with attempted murder.
Doing the Lord's work.
Now, don't make jokes like that. So,
But it's attempted murder, even though he didn't shoot, he didn't get a shot off.
That's an interesting question because also attempted murder, even though the guy who showed up for Pelosi said that he just wanted to break her kneecap. So I don't know how but be that as it may, they're both charged with attempted murder. It was covered, but it was undercovered. I mean, almost nobody knows he was charged with attempted murder.
Okay.
The president did not even comment on it himself. His press secretary went out and said the president strongly condemns this action, whatever it is. And nor did the president comment on what was clearly, just as obvious the case, that it was the rhetoric, anti-Supreme Court rhetoric, which certainly did lead this guy to show up at Kavanaugh's house to kill him. And prior to that, actually, they were showing up. People were protesting outside the homes of the Supreme Court justices, and they asked the previous press secretary, Jen Psaki, about it. She said, "Well, that's democracy." And there's a law about protesting outside Supreme Court justices' house, which Merrick Garland didn't enforce. So, I think it's absolutely true that the rhetoric is out of control on both sides, and that this can filter down to crazy people who become violent, and people with some self-respect and integrity ought to bear that in mind when they say things. But for the president to not even bother to comment on the Kavanaugh thing, and then now that it happened again, what would it take for the leader of the whole country to say, this is terrible what happened to Pelosi, the rhetoric has got to stop. This is probably spurred on by the January 6th thing. And by the way, it's not just on that side. We all have to do it because let's not forget that somebody also showed up to kill one of our Supreme Court justices. So the whole country needs to bear this in mind and lower the temperature. Wouldn't a fucking president of all the people say such a thing? Now, maybe I'm resenting it for no reason.
No, I think that that's reasonable. I think so. He didn't say anything about Kavanaugh or about Pelosi, or he said
He
something
said a lot about
Pelo-
Pelosi. He said righteous stuff about Pelosi that is terrible. Well, he said some righteous stuff about it, and he blamed the rhetoric, and I can't. Nobody can dismiss. There's two questions. One question is whether somebody did something because of rhetoric, and the next question is, does that mean somebody shouldn't have said something? Charles Manson was hearing orders to kill in the Beatles song "Helter Skelter," right?
Right.
So, and people, people say high charged things. And they ought to be able to say highly charged things. London Breed was talking about, we call to arms, we got to fight. Chuck Schumer said, we're reckoning. But so people say stuff. So, I don't know where everybody
Where
might.
it crosses over.
Yeah.
Well, that's
and
not.
a
Yeah,
tough
that's
question.
not an excuse to.
But one thing is for sure, the political temperature is very, very hot. I think it's even more. They're both pretty likely, but given what was going on with Roe versus Wade. Given the fact that Kavanaugh didn't even write that opinion, that was the Dobbs opinion. That was Alito, and but Kavanaugh was the one who everybody hates. He's the gang rapist. He's all these stories about him, all which fizzled, right? So it is likely that all the attacks on him as being a rapist, all the stuff that you're saying now, the law, this all in a pressure cooker, and then the Dobbs decision, which he voted for, led to some crazy person traveling cross country to kill Kavanaugh. That seems totally plausible, right?
Okay.
And you'd think the president, he's head of the Democratic Party, but he's also the president of the United States. You wouldn't think it'd be pulling teeth for him to say, listen, I'm blah, 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 but this is too much. No, can't say it. Anyway, that's my feeling about it.
It's not because you have an affinity for Kavanaugh. You're just saying that because you don't think you want it to be fair on both sides. You're saying that.
Listen, I like Kavanaugh, and I kind of like Nancy Pelosi. I don't agree with Nancy Pelosi, but I don't have any hatred of Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. Certainly, the idea of somebody coming to attack her, let alone attack her husband.
Yeah, it's horrible.
This is 82-year-old man.
No, it's horrible.
No, I know. I'm saying it's obviously horrible, but so is somebody showing up. Just the whole way the stories, something has gone wrong where almost nobody I knew.
Yeah, I didn't know about the Kavanaugh story.
Yeah, what is that?
It's also a little bit less spectacular because.
Well, okay, but let's imagine if somebody showed up outside Ketanji Jackson's house with a gun and zip ties. You think you wouldn't have heard about that?
Yeah, I probably would have heard about that.
Yeah, I think we would. Even if they caught the guy or her. Right outside. That would be a bigger story. In some way, I'm sure I have a pretty good grasp of human nature. The people who write for these big outlets, it pains them to write anything or to give too much energy to a story, which in the end is an indictment of the people who are protesting the Dobbs
By the way,
decision.
speaking of
It's
this
hard for them.
Supreme Court, isn't there something going on with Harvard and the Supreme Court and your favorite topic, affirmative?
They're finally going to end, I believe, they're finally going to end the universities using race as a way to keep people out.
And to get people in.
But I think this is more about using it to keep people out. Zero sum, right? But I heard yesterday a report, they have these interviews, these holistic things. They have these interviews and they have test scores, blah, 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 but they also want to know all about you. So they interview to see what your personality is like. Asians scored the lowest, having the worst personality.
Discussed.
But you don't know the other part. And black people scored the highest. Which is just, isn't it obvious what's going on there?
What's going on there?
They are trying to hedge against the scores and all the grades, so they have another round of consideration.
Personality?
That lo and behold, the people with the highest scores have the worst personalities, so they can even it all out that way.
what are they? How are you measuring good personality?
In an interview with a non-Asian person, obviously, because I'm sure an Asian admissions officer wouldn't rank the Asian person. It's so fucking foul.
Yeah, that sounds so horrible. Like,
What's funny about Periel is that we've talked about this like 5 times. We've talked about this so many times that Dan's like, please don't bring this up again. And Periel's reacting to it like the first time she heard it.
it is the first time I'm hearing it. I mean, I probably zoned out because it's just
So what's before the Supreme Court that they cannot use an interview as criteria?
I don't really know what the issue, but it's in some way they're just not allowed to use racial quotas.
Okay.
And I think that's right. The truth is, if they would simply have affirmative action for African Americans, and let's say they wanted to say, I don't think it could plausibly be the same number of spots as there are black people in the population, only for the reason that we know, this is tragic what I'm about to say, but we know how the public school systems are so horrible. It just, you just wouldn't, you can't have the kind of 40, 50, 60% of young kids in public schools not being able to read and then expect to have an equal number of the population at Harvard. I think that's a stretch. But let's say they did. Let's say 10% of the spots at Harvard were going to be for descendants of slaves because of what we did to black people. I have principled reasons that I might oppose that, but if that worked for the greater good, like, okay, that's not the end of the world, right? Like, who's getting all bent out of shape about that? Like, that's fine. It's the fact that they then are taking a bean counter for every other group. So let's have 10% of the spots for black people, and let's treat the other 90% of humans the same, right? I can live with that. But the idea of signaling out Asians, because we don't want too many Asians, that is so foul. It's un-American. It's exactly what they did to the Jews. And yet Jews are supporting it. Fucking Jews.
Well,
Kanye was right.
I don't know. Well, I assume some are supporting it, some are not supporting it.
Well, Jews support these liberal.
I just feel like if somebody had been taking personality into account when I was applying for college, I probably would have gone to a much better school.
Doing something under the table is not personality, Perry.
And then there's a question of how much is going to a better school at the end of the day going to benefit you if you're not qualified to do the work while you're there.
Well, maybe you learn maybe you become more qualified. And also, as we all know, a lot of that, having connections is very helpful, having access to things.
Look, it's not race. People who are disadvantaged, people who overachieve for their profile in life, in other words, a rich private school tutors gets this grade. Working class, broken home, poor Mississippi. Notice I didn't lousy public schools gets almost the same grade. It's totally reasonable to say, you know what, we're going to weight that lower grade as equal or better than this person who had a silver spoon in his mouth. That's totally, who could argue with that? Doesn't require race.
Right.
And if black people are overrepresented in that pool of people who's given special dispensation because they've had a more difficult background, then that's fine. Like, I don't think there's anybody who objects to that. But my kids are not white, right? My kids are mixed race. Is there any reason anybody can come up with what my kids ought to get extra allowance when they apply to a school? It's crazy. I mean, I hope they get it.
They're definitely not marking white on their college
but again,
application.
at the end of the day, I don't know how big a difference it's going to make long term. Instead of going to Harvard, they got to go to Michigan or Penn. I mean, I don't know how big a difference.
It's a big difference.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a big difference. No, I mean, I think there aren't too many people on Harvard who coming out of Harvard who are turning down small offers. There's a great middle of universities where maybe it's not that clear. But the very, very top schools, I think it's a big difference. By the way, Dershowitz said on his show that he only got in the 94th percentile. Is it percentile or percentile?
Well, is it percentile or what?
How do you pronounce the word?
I pronounce it percentile.
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 He only got in the 94th percentile on his LSATs. Dershowitz.
Yeah.
How did you think you could have pronounced that?
Percentile?
Percentile.
Who ever heard of that?
Well, I've never heard anyone pronounce it.
You
that
know
way,
what it
but-
is? I tell you, I said it that way when I was like in the second grade when I first read it.
Yeah.
And it always, and then I was corrected. And I know it's percentile, but that mispronunciation has stayed with me my entire life. It's always like, wait,
Say it again.
because
Just say it.
percentile,
And then say your version of it.
percentile.
Okay, both of them are. We know what you're getting at, but so
What the
you're
fuck
saying
is with you?
What are we getting at?
Well, anyway, so Dershowitz. So you expected him to be 99, I guess.
Yeah. And
You went to Harvard Law.
he went to Yale.
I went to
He
Yale.
graduated first in his class. But
All right.
so what does that tell us? You know, it's pretty interesting that he didn't have a stellar LSAT. It's stellar, 94th percentile
yeah, I mean, that's pretty good, isn't
in
it?
your family.
But first in his class at Yale, you would think it would be higher.
No, I didn't. I meant that in terms of his accomplishments and being the youngest criminal law professor in the Ivy League, and in terms of his intellectual firepower and accomplishments, you would have thought he'd be at the very top of testing, but he wasn't. So it made me think that there's a bigger margin of error on these tests than we realize, and that maybe. But more importantly, it made me think that for every discipline, there's only so much intelligence you need before the law of diminishing returns kicks in, meaning that legal reasoning is not
That hard.
it's not quantum physics.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I always said that. I don't think
Yeah.
being a lawyer is that tricky necessarily.
So you need to know, but to be a great lawyer, you need to be smart,
Yeah.
but probably being smart enough to get in the 94th percentile on the LSATs is
Good enough.
good enough to be able to allow you to understand 100% of the challenging things in the law. But the same kind of score on a STEM admissions test, whatever, would never get you near a physics lab and be able to contribute.
It might get you near a physics lab, but it wouldn't get you to the very highest echelon.
to be able to contribute to like
It wouldn't
breakthroughs in
get
physics.
you to Stephen Hawking.
Yeah,
level.
no, it just wouldn't. You need to be top 10th of 1% to make breakthroughs in
Yeah,
physics.
legal concepts aren't really that hard.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not. As you said, quantum physics.
Yeah. Now, I bought Quantum Physics for Dummies.
Is there such a book?
Yes, there is. And there's a dummies book for everything. And I've been trying to read it. And I guess I'm not a dummy because I don't understand what they're saying.
Well, if you can't, there's no such thing as quantum physics for dummies. Dummies shouldn't be studying quantum physics in the first place. Or as my joke is, this quantum physics for dummies should just be open it up. It says you're going to have to cheat.
I wanted it dumbed down, but like it talks about particles and waves. And light is both a particle anyway, but I'm supposed to understand what a particle and a wave is. And then they give formulas.
Stephen Hawking wrote a book called A Brief History of Time. It was supposed to be the layman's guide to whatever that is, astrophysics, and it was incomprehensible, to me anyway, and I'm not dumb. So, I would imagine it's incomprehensible to many people.
Periel?
I'm just waiting.
It's like up at gluons and then spinning, and I don't know, but it's you can't, there's no easy way to explain the origins of matter, the workings of the universe. Some things just aren't meant for the lay population.
All the matter in the universe, including time, by the way, was contained in a ball of mass the size of the head of a pin. And then it exploded, and it continues to explode and created an infinite universe. It makes perfect sense. Who couldn't understand that?
Well, first of all, I don't know that the universe is necessarily infinite. That's not
An infinitely expanding universe. Well,
So
who
how
knows?
could you not?
Well,
believe
some
in
people think the universe
energy?
is infinite, and some people think it's not infinite. You keep going far enough, you come back to the other side.
What's that, Periel?
So then, how could you not believe in energy?
What do you mean? He does believe in energy.
No, he doesn't. We've talked about this with souls and energy.
Oh, you're talking about souls. Energy is not the same thing.
Well, I don't know. That's debatable. Some people say it is, that there's energy comprised in your body, and when you die, that energy still exists.
Well, but there is something in
Well,
quantum.
the energy still exists, but you're saying something else.
Wait, hold on. There is
No one
some-
doesn't even want to
there is something
engage you in
there. No, I do, but there is something in quantum physics, and it is actually related to what you're saying.
I know.
There is something in quantum physics about taking an atom or something, and sending it off to two different parts of the universe, and somehow, if you measure the rotation on this atom, that measurement will then affect the rotation on the other atom that's in a totally different, as if they're somehow connected in some way.
Right, that's what I've been saying.
In a way that classical physics
That's
can't,
not what you've been
can't
saying.
explain. Well, no, it's not what she's saying, but it certainly opens the door to the idea. Not really, I guess, but but in some sense, it opens the door to the idea that something can be totally beyond our ability to comprehend.
Well, that's for sure. Obviously, we can't comprehend these things. It doesn't necessarily mean that the explanation is God.
But my question is, if you think that your soul lives on in energy, which version of your soul? Is it when you're a baby? Is it when you're in your 20s? Is it when you have dementia? Like what? What exactly? What will I be when I leave this mortal coil?
That's a good question.
I hadn't thought of that, had you?
No, I have thought of that.
Oh.
I think that it's not when you're a baby though. I think it's
But if we exist now, did you exist before you were a baby?
well, the Jews think that you did. They
So it's a reincarnation.
well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know how. I mean, a lot of
So most souls waiting in heaven are Chinese. I'm just asking you what you think.
I don't think that most souls in heaven are Chinese.
Yeah, this is a classic thing, Dan, because there are people out there, like you and I are different. You start with something and you can't help but thinking it through in a certain way. What if I believe that? And this means that it must be blissful to be able to say, I believe in energy, and just stop. Like that, that's all I need. I believe in energy, la-di-da.
The expression on Dan's face is priceless.
Well, it's like, Woody Allen was talking about, how Woody Allen was talking about going to a party and meeting people that are just, they believe in God, and he's like making fun of them. But then again, they're probably happier than me.
Yeah.
So who wins?
Well, there's also that sort of adage that says, when you die, you're not sad when you die. It's just everybody else who's...
Okay, but that I'm not sure that's related to.
Well, let me finish. And said it's the same thing when you're stupid. It's just you don't know you're stupid. You're just making everybody else
Okay,
is
all right, that's related.
That was smart. All right, so that's all I have to say about the week.
What time do we have? Because
6:17.
Okay, Rachel, we're waiting on Rachel Feinstein.
Yeah.
Oh, I will say this. So I think I could say this. I had a conversation with my trans friend, one of my trans friends. I'm not virtue signaling, but I have a few trans friends, and she was. I noticed she was being forgetful, and she was like all concerned about the forgetfulness. And I was like, well, what about the fact that you're taking testosterone blockers? She's like, yeah, I have 0 testosterone. And I'm like, well, one of the classic symptoms of low T, if you watch any commercial, is forgetfulness. Mm-hmm. And she was like, it is? I'm like, yes, there's all sorts of symptoms of low T, like being sluggish and feeling run down and forgetfulness and having trouble focusing. Didn't your doctor discuss any of these with you as they're giving you 100% testosterone blockers? She's like, no. And I just thought that was wrong. Not that she shouldn't take it. That's not even my point. My point is that it's heavy medicine, right? It's like it's not a woman who has not a biological woman who has no testosterone. It's a trans woman who has no testosterone. And you'd think that they would at least be informed of the likely side effects of blocking 100%.
Well, let's get her doctor on the show.
I would love to, but you follow me?
Yeah, I'm following.
So I'm like telling her, hi, Rachel. I was telling her, like, don't worry about your forgetfulness. It's not dementia. It's not cognitive decline. It's probably just that you're taking testosterone blockers. I don't know. Are there any doctors out there? I'm sure that it's like, so I even Googled to make sure. It's like it's like nobody even discusses that with them.
All right,
Well, that's something we should get into with a doctor, because it could be something we're missing, or maybe not. But that's an interesting
I'm saying
question that we should, if we can, explore. Rachel Feinstein, hello.
Hi, I thought you guys were talking about me at first because I'm like shedding debit cards every week. I'm forgetting everything.
Have you checked your testosterone level?
My testosterone is fucking low.
Well, women don't
How
have
could
any.
it be
Do women
living with
have
that?
any testosterone?
Yeah, they have some.
I
yeah.
think we have a whisper.
And actually, they say that testosterone is responsible for sex drive in women. I've read that. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
I do notice that guys under my videos online say a lot of lovely things. One of them is man voice, wouldn't fuck her because of the man voice. So that's always stays with me and it's really helpful and it makes me feel good.
That's not true. That's not the reason.
I read all my comments. Some guy named Mr. Twat Waffle said that like 7 years ago and it still haunts
Stay with
me.
you.
Yeah.
Well, you
Man
probably shouldn't
voice.
read all your comments.
You can't do it.
So,
I
can
know.
you introduce Rachel?
Rachel Feinstein, Rachel Louise Feinstein. Do we have a formal intro for her? I don't know. She's a comedy
My
seller
grandmother
regular.
used to sing a song. I could
I
sing
know. I know
Eyes
she
so brown, cheeks so round, lips like cherry wine. Everybody stop beating off. The sweetest girl I know in town is Rachel Louise Feinstein.
That's amazing.
I know.
That's Feinstein.
Yes, Feinstein. And
Yeah, he said Feinstein.
he always says it wrong.
Yeah.
Was it Feinstein?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
Naturman.
Feinstein.
But nobody pronounces it that way. Everybody that introduces you here says,
Half the people say it wrong, but what's the point of bothering?
You're going by Artie?
I think everybody says Rachel Feinstein. Everybody, generally speaking, when you're discussed, it's Rachel Feinstein.
Fine is wine.
The good news is you're discussed in a very positive way, even if your name is mispronounced. The reason I asked Periel to invite Rachel on is because Rachel always has been funny, but I believe has in recent, whether it's months or years, but I would say maybe
Weeks.
the past year, has reached a new level. It's Rachel 2.0. And I'm not the only one who says this.
That's not true. I mean that is true. That is everybody. In all seriousness, everybody says that Rachel's on fire these days.
Oh,
That's
really?
absolutely true.
That'll like get me through the weekend.
Yeah.
I needed that.
And a lot of it's to do with the material that she has about being married and her very
Firefighter stuff helps.
her relationship and the contrast between you and your husband, which I invite you to if you want to summarize what that contrast is.
Well, my family is like, aggressively liberal. I talk about it on stage. My mom would have preferred probably if I married like a Nigerian lesbian than an Irish Catholic fireman. And his family, yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's political without being political but like they, I come from like Jewy oversharers, like they talk about like purchases, like what you got at Costco or what you got to get at Costco. Like they talk
You mean
about
your
crypto.
husband's family?
My husband's family and the firefighters. Yeah. I mean, you were, at my wedding and you were there. I think like my dad, he didn't even give me a wedding toast. It was just like a speech about immigration. He didn't mention it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
It was a speech about
Immigration. He didn't mention me or Pete once.
it was a speech about diversity.
Yes, diversity.
Well,
What the fuck does that have to do with me getting married, Dad? Jesus.
He did mention that you married an Irish person, and so did I think your
He was
brother.
like, we've got people from everywhere. We have Colombia. This is what America's about. I'm like, Dad, this is about a wedding. Excuse me.
What I remember from your wedding most of all was Sharad gave a very good speech.
He
Oh
did.
my God. Yeah,
Off,
Sherrod.
off the top of his head. He was very good, right?
At one
That was
point, Sherrod
his
stood up
best
and he's like,
performance.
I remember when he just looks at my brother because I was roommates with Sherrod for years. And he's like, I remember when I was roommates with Rachel, you were in baby pajamas. You were in PJs, footy PJs to my brother, who's like a grown man now, which wasn't true. He was a grown man then. But he was like, he got up in the middle of the wedding. I'm like praying my mother-in-law doesn't understand half of this, because people are speaking so fast. And in the middle of his speech, she goes, how many of your friends did I fuck? How many of your friends did I fuck, Rachel? And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then he goes, stand up if I fucked you. Stand up if I fucked you. And then Tom Papa slowly stood up and he was like, Judy Gold stood up. She's like, well.
That was so funny. But so can I tell you something? This maybe, we can cut anything out you want here.
I don't care.
But
Maybe I will care.
one of the things I really like about your relationship with Pete, although he's the greatest guy ever, and he makes all of us feel like little girls.
You've said that before, but I don't feel that he makes me feel like a
Oh, it makes me feel like a little girl because I've never even had a fight. I've never been tested in terms of bravery in any way.
Right.
And this fucking guy is anxious to run into a burning building to save
a weird
strangers.
thing.
He doesn't even know what color they are.
I know.
I'm kidding. And, but what I like about it is that I don't know his politics, but I know he's a fireman. So if he's not pro-Trump, he's Trump adjacent, and he's certainly not offended by Trump because you can't be offended by people who support Trump and be in that profession. So, which is as it should be, because people are.
He's not political, really.
Yeah.
He's like, I mean, he probably is like more libertarian, but like he doesn't really. It's hard for me to scream at him though about voting because he's a technical hero. So I can't be like, you need to vote. Like, and it's like he's also going to go like save people. But I try to push him to like.
But the fact that you're comfortable with those, and I don't know what his.
It's my type. Like I talk about it on stage. I like a thick-necked, working class.
Well, and that his family's probably, some of them got to be pro-Trump. There's no way a firefighter
Why
family.
are you so excited?
Well, because
that
I'll get this.
Maybe
Because
pro-Trump.
no, because and then Amy is a very good friend of yours.
Yes.
And Amy hates Trump.
Right.
And yet, the whole lot of you get along with a lot of warmth.
Everybody can get around fire. And Amy was at the firehouse the other day.
Yeah,
she.
I just think that speaks well of all of you. I just like that. I've seen that dynamic, and I said, well, I just think that should be listened to everybody.
Yes, I do feel like that. I feel like that is a lot of the special. It's like a lot of the way we communicate without being overtly political, because I'm not a good. I don't write political jokes. I can't really do that. But we come from just opposite, very opposing perspectives. You know what I'm saying? And like, I mean, my dad. Running to a burning building. My dad has a never-ending sinus infection. Like he can't fix it. Like he doesn't know how to operate a fuse box.
But your father was a civil rights lawyer, which takes some degree of
bravery,
I
certainly.
think.
But he doesn't have like that physical bravery.
Right.
There's just a different set of things that were discussed at my dinner table than at his. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a whole nother fucking world. Yeah.
It's Jewy bravery.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's a different style of bravery. But it's like he was. But you know what? They're a lot like comics. Firefighters, because like they are, besides the fact that we're the real heroes. I'm such a twat. I'm like, but we're like the same, really. We're like narcissists, and they're, But I mean, like they get on, they work these weird hours. They have this weird insular community that nobody else understands but themselves. Like if you walk into the firehouse kitchen, it's like the same energy as just like some drunk twat walking up to the Comedy Cellar table. Like it's like it's like the chemicals change when a civilian walks up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's the same like when a non-comic comes up, because we have this weird life that nobody else quite understands, and it's very similar. And also that like comics, there's no PC. Like you could say anything to each other, and they don't give a shit. So in that way, they're a good fucking hang firemen. And I'm aroused by most of them.
I also think that you get like a pass if you're a fireman.
Yeah.
Right? Like
there's no like defund the firefighter movement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the political thing. It's like if you're a cop and you have those politics, it's dicey. But if you're a fireman or a firefighter and you do, it's like what Rachel said. You're a technical hero.
Yeah. It's hard to argue about. I mean, we had an argument because on our honeymoon, I was like, I was arguing with him about the window seat, and I'm like, it's like the ultimate sacrifice if I gave you the window seat. And he's like, it's not the ultimate sacrifice. I'm like, yes, it is. The window seat to Bali? He's like, it's not.
Do you remember all the pussy that firemen had thrown at them after 9/11?
Oh my God, a surplus of puss. And some of them just got on. They didn't deserve it. That was like back puss owed to the other guys.
It was crazy.
Insane. That wasn't a good time to date a fireman. I mean, you got to wait till that puss storm is over.
Yeah.
No reasonable man could not jump into that puss ring.
It was crazy.
Well, I remember
I've never seen
that
anything
was
like
the
that.
perception. I wasn't hanging around firemen, so I don't know what exactly.
On the street, you'd see it on the street.
Yeah, you could.
Well, what
It
would
was
you see on the street?
crazy.
What did you
Women,
see?
I've never seen anything like that.
My friend, I don't know if you know Irene Bremis. She's hilarious,
Yeah.
gorgeous,
Of course I know.
really funny.
She's the one that set you up with your husband.
She introduced me to Pete, and I was hanging out at steakhouses because I thought men hang out at steakhouses.
Well, they do. I've advised women to go to steakhouses like single
That's a
friends.
good policy.
Yeah.
She was with the steakhouse bar with me, and she was like, "Sweetie, this is getting a little old, sweetie. She's like, "I'll get you a fireman if you want," because I was just hanging at steakhouse bars, like leering at strangers.
Wait, how did she know Pete?
her husband is a retired firefighter.
Oh, that's right.
And
okay, I knew that.
He actually named he had a pizza place around the corner that closed down in COVID, sadly, but he named it after one of the firefighters, Fury, that died in 9/11. And he was and Pete, he was close friends with him and had been retired for years. And his son, he's a lot older than Irene, and his son is around our age, so he worked with Pete. So he just texted his son, like, can you get a firefighter for Rachel? And they texted me like 2 options back pretty fast.
Periel asks questions sometimes, and I think to myself, she must know something like this. It's got to be a leading question, because this is not a kind of question that the audience it's so like minute and detailed about how did you. I said, Periel must know that there's some good backstory here.
Yeah, it's an interesting
no.
story.
Well,
not just like page 472 of some fucking legal dossier.
So Rachel, when I listen to your
Well,
act,
here's how I just sorry, one more thing about what you're asking about how we met. Here's how I was described to Pete.
This is better.
His buddy calls him up and he goes, "How would you like to meet a semi-famous Jewish jokester?" That was the. Have you heard
we
of
go.
lesser?
yeah, I think you said that during your speech at the wedding, your vows or something.
Yeah.
You brought that up.
And that's
Jewish
true.
jokester. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
Jewish
how I was described.
And he
then
was like, I'm in.
he's like, "Yeah, why not?" Thought it was kind of interesting. I was like, "Did you watch my stand-up?" He didn't. He's like, nah, I didn't watch it."
Now, around the house, if I didn't know he was a firefighter, would I see a kind of at ease with fire that surprised me, like when he cooks or when he starts it like
No.
yeah.
They are like fire cocky, so they don't give a shit. And I'm like, that's dangerous. But they're like, they have like cockiness because they're firemen. He lights a candle by taking a fucking paper towel and putting it in flame. I probably shouldn't say this, but anyway, he'll walk it over to a candle. I'm like, you can't do that. He's like, yeah, because he knows he can put it out.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You see, that's
They're like, I'm not worried about a fire. Like, I can handle a fire.
what are you worried about?
He's
Sweetie?
like, I could put that out with the can.
Well,
That's
does he
what
have
you call
his,
what's it called?
Extinguisher?
Yes, the can. He's like, put it out with the can if I had to. I'm like,
But he doesn't
"That's the
have
point."
his equipment at home. Does he have his the oxygen tank and the mask? He doesn't have that at home. If
No,
he
he
needs to
has
escape
his
the
gear-
apartment.
He has his gear at home a lot because he moves around to different firehouses. He finally just got like a regular spot. But so he does have his gear at home a lot. And we got bunker gear for Frankie, my daughter. So she's wearing her gear downstairs.
What does bunker gear mean?
I got her a little jacket, like a foil-foited jacket with his name on the back.
So cute.
My daughter.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I think your Instagram reels. But when I watch your act, I say to myself, "This is funny, but how the fuck is this marriage possibly going to work?"
Well, he drives me insane. That's why I have like a lot of material because I'm pulsing with fury at him all the time.
But you drive him insane too.
I'm sure, yes.
She won't leave him if it's good for her act.
No. The material is really good.
Cling on to
Yeah.
him with a whole.
Well,
floor.
Because emotionally, he's a desert. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it feels like to be married to a first responder. You know, like when you watch like Forensic Files and you hear those 911 calls and the woman's like, he's chasing me. Like, there's a man, he's going to kill me. He's got a fucking knife. He's going to kill. And the woman's like, ma'am, your address, ma'am. Like, that's what it feels like because they don't like attend to you emotionally because they're used
So
to dealing
you'll be
with
yelling
like,
at him, and he's saying, "Ma'am, calm down."
I'm like not so much of a yeller, but I'll be like, do you not understand how that would make me feel? You know? And he's just like, he doesn't
Like,
get it.
what's
oblivious? Like I was about to go on stage. It was Amy's Netflix special. So I'm like about to go on stage for the Netflix special. I'm like, you need to send me something. Like you've got it. He forgets. He doesn't, so I'm about to go on stage. He sends me something. I'm like, I can't open this. What is it? I figured it'd be like a picture of a flower. I'm like, well, it's something. It's a step. Obviously he should have sent actual flowers. I was like, I can't open this. I'm about to go on for the Netflix special. What is it? He goes, gas bill. Sorry, that's what it feels like. And don't worry, I just took a COVID test. It's not COVID. I'm losing my voice.
A gas bill. That's
Gas bill.
amazing.
That's what it feels like.
And maybe we should just get him on. What's has he had? What's the close? Has he been injured? Has he been burned? Has he? God forbid.
No, he hasn't been burned. He went into a bad fire recently. His 118 is firehouse. And a friend of his was burned, but he was fine. He's okay. He burned his ears a little bit. That was a scary fire. That was probably the first one he's been in where I've been worried because he always FaceTimes my daughter in the morning. I mean, it wasn't FaceTiming. I'm like, yeah, he always as soon as he had a kid, it was like I figured out that like he loved her so much more than me because he would like race home for the firehouse all of a sudden. Be every reason he had to stay there. Hey, we're having coffee and hanging out. But I was like, if he doesn't pick up, something's up. And he was at a fire that Then I Google usually.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Your questions are all about, do you know what it feels like for her to be married to somebody who's doing such dangerous things?
That's a good question.
Wait, so you were going to criticize Noam's question first?
Yeah, because he's just asking about Pete.
What is the danger compared to police officers in terms of death and injury on the line of duty for a fireman versus a cop? They say the fisherman is actually the most dangerous.
No, I actually looked up, like, this is what I do, like
Commercial
at a
fish?
fire, just to terrorize myself because I am a neurotic Jew. I looked up like most dangerous jobs, and it's like, yeah, truckers more dangerous, like weird things you wouldn't think about.
I believe that fire over the years has become much, much safer than it used to be because, first of all, there's way fewer fires, and the technology to fight them is much
Well, they
better.
complain about that too. No, they'll be like, Manhattan, no good jobs. Too many fucking sprinklers.
Yeah.
He's like, too many sprinkles, in Manhattan. We don't get any good jobs anymore. So they go, Brooklyn burns. They love working at Brooklyn because it burns more.
Years ago in the Fat Black Pussycat, the sprinklers saved one of the waiters who you all know threw a cigarette in the trash can and left the place, and the place caught on fire, but the sprinklers put the whole thing out. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But it is nerve-wracking for you. You do get nervous when he goes to work. And then she's like Googling fires. She's like trying to...
Yeah, I mean, you get used to it like anything else. But if I know that he is in a fire, yeah, I'm nervous while he's in
Yeah, of
fire.
course.
Of
Yeah,
course,
freaking
yeah.
out. Yeah. I'm like looping and it's weird that I don't have more updates available to me than just Googling FDNY fire again and again, but that's what I do and I'll text different people to see if they're working or if they've gotten word or whoever the house guy is. Actually, one time I was here and I ordered wings to bring to the firehouse, and I get all the way there and they're like, "Oh, he's downtown." I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "He's at the Trade Center." I'm like, "He's at the fucking Trade Center? Why?" You know? And it was like, this is before we had a kid. It was like 2 a.m. I cabbed down there. I was freaking out. You guys, there was all these firemen and cops and everything, just like all around. You couldn't get anywhere
What do you
near
mean by the Trade Center? You
World
mean
Freedom
Trade
Tower,
Center.
Freedom Tower.
The old
The
Trade
Freedom
Center,
Tower.
Freedom Tower. Sorry, the Freedom Towers. They're like, he's at the Freedom Towers. So you can't even see. It's like a rows of cops and firemen. I'm like weeping. I'm like, I have the wings. By the way, I was holding on to the wings the entire time. I didn't let go of them because they're fucking good. I'm holding on to the wings. I'm like, where's my husband? Turns out he was doing a drill. A middle of the night drill that they don't announce. I just realized, I don't know if I was supposed to say that. I'll ask him later. But like, they didn't announce it. So that's why I'm like, I can't figure out. There's no news about this. I'm like, what the fuck's happening? Nobody's answering me. And then he gets out covered in like soot and he's complaining. He's like, about the actors. He's like, this guy is fucking dragging his feet. I'm like, dude, you're not De Niro. I got to go to bed. Let's fucking keep it moving. He thinks it's this big break because they have actors in the tunnel. They reenact these scenes. So
They do?
prep themselves. Yeah, they have actors. It's whole big things. But you're right. It is much safer because they're much more ready and their communication is better and, you know. But, and again, I'm like weeping. He's like, yeah, what's wrong with you? He's like, oh, he's a girl. Like, didn't even notice. I'm like fully sobbing. He's like, I just blue cheese in there. He's like, that'd be good. One day Tina like that. Like,
They have good food at the fires. I know from the very, very once or twice when I performed for a firehouse, because sometimes I'll do shows at firehouses, and I'm not the go-to firehouse comic. You know, they usually like a Rich Voss would be more, or a
Shocking.
A Robert Kelly would be more of a guy that might perform for firemen. But the couple times I've done it,
I love that Naturman announced that. As if
At least you're self-aware.
but they do have, but it's like they have excellent food. The times that I've
They
been.
can all cook because they have to cook the first 2 years. You always see them in grocery stores because they're always grocery shopping.
Really?
My mind is wandering about this. You know, I made that like a bad joke. He doesn't even know what color they are. But I was thinking that, you know, it's interesting that a fireman, this is not with regard to Pete, that a fireman will risk his life for any human. We're absolutely regardless of color or anything like that, right? And I believe they will do that even if they have bigoted beliefs. It's you know,
I mean, my husband also, he's Colombian, so he's not like, he's pretty, it's pretty diverse now. So in terms of that,
no, I'm
bigotry, I don't really see it.
I'm excluding him because I know him, but firemen in general, you're going to have a certain percentage of firemen like everybody in the population, but maybe more in a professional, like maybe not, but let's just say, but whatever it is, people who are bigots, who are firemen, and there's some of them, right? it's somehow interesting to me that they will still, I'm sure, risk their lives to save any human. It's just it's just interesting about humans, like they're contradictory in certain way. I don't know what I'm saying. Like I said,
Well,
I'm
it's
just
part
thinking
of
out
their
loud,
job, and you know,
Maybe not. I actually just read an article.
Also, there's a lot of the firehouses themselves are really diverse. Like when Amy came by the firehouse the other day, the girl that was doing the drill, the woman, female firefighter, black female firefighter, she's amazing.
Well, there was a scene similar to this that brought this out. It just occurred to me in that movie. I feel it was
Much more
called
diverse,
Race
yeah.
or something with Matt Dillon, where he played the racist cop. Remember that movie?
yeah, the movie, the name of the movie wasn't Race. I think it was. I remember the movie you're talking about.
It was, I think it had a one-word name like that. Like anyway, and
Maybe it was Traffic.
maybe it's Traffic, no, Traffic was about the drug dealers. Anyway, whatever it was, and he was a racist, like a badly racist cop.
Right.
And then this black girl is in the car accident, and the fire is coming towards the gas tank, and he risks his life to save the girl
Yeah.
in the car, and it was exactly that thing. Like it brought out the
Humanity.
just the contradictoriness of it all.
Right.
I don't know.
I do
we can
also
cut
feel
that out.
like-
Cut this whole thing out in the call.
I do
I
feel
shouldn't
like-
think out loud. But it's interesting, no?
Well, I think it's because duty is trumps personal feelings. You know, the last thing they want to be is a coward or a shirker.
Also,
That
like, what kind of
that is worse to them than.
also like there's also a difference between just person. I know what you're trying to say, but like feelings and being just bigoted. Like how evil do you have to be that you would like save
Well, there's
somebody
people
based
that
on
might
their
have-
skin color.
I'm also not sure you're right. Like, I feel like probably there are cops or whoever that are like, yeah, no, I don't give a shit about those.
Cops are totally different. I don't know about cops because cops, I can understand less holy motives for wanting to be a cop. Cops may enjoy the power, God forbid, the bullying. There's a lot of things about being a cop which could be appealing to a person that was coming from a bad place. Firefighting, to me anyway, is a selfless profession. You don't get off on any kind of sadistic or anything like that. You are there to save lives by risking your own life, right? Mm-hmm. That's a hell of a thing. It's just, so.
It is, yeah. And it's also, it's insane. I mean, I can't approach.
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily the motivation for every fireman to get into it. They might want the adventure. They might think it's a good job with a pension.
The ass.
They might,
ass
there's probably a
numbers,
lot
they
of
might crunch the
reasons.
numbers.
Mixed motivation, but I can't come up with
It's a thrilling, exciting job. It's different.
Yeah, the adrenaline.
But I can't come up with a bad motivation for being a fireman.
I will say this: they love their jobs. If you, they did a report in Bloomberg of the top 10 most satisfied workers in America, and firefighters are in the top 10. They just love being firefighters because they get such great feedback on their jobs, and it's exciting,
And you're saving lives.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's got to be fantastic.
Laughter saves lives.
Well, I don't think we're in the top. I doubt we're in the top
You're right about narcissism.
satisfied people.
My laughter saves lives too, right?
Hilarious. You're talking about John Lasser. I was like, he was a fireman. I was just like, maybe I should have already known this, so I didn't say anything.
Laughter saves lives.
Alaska.
Oh, laughter. I thought you said Lasser. I'm glad we.
I said laughter saves
Hilarious.
lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's. What were you going to say, Natty?
Forgot.
I mean, they're different. They're. It's a whole insane world, and but he definitely gives me a lot of material because emotionally, he's like oblivious, completely oblivious.
And that's what you
Like he boarded a plane once without me. Oh my god! I'm like, Pete, what the fuck?
This is what you attribute your I don't know, the tear that you're on in terms of killing.
Thank you. I'm just happy you said that. I don't know what I think. I'm glad that material. He does give me a lot of material. I think they give a lot because it's like this entirely different world crashing into my world. Because a lot of my life now is a lot of this stuff because he's going to be a chief soon. It becomes very, intense. It's like I got these I go to these FDNY Staten Island like dinner dances all the time, and there's always like functions. And here I am, this loud Jewish comic. Like I'm not, like they could Google me and just know that say things. So like I am not in that world at all. So
I mean,
and now I am.
But how do you? But when you go to these events and you interact with the other firewives, and I know you say on stage that that's not a word that they actually use. But
Fire
um,
twats.
but I mean, do you get along with these people? Or you just is it difficult or annoying for you or
It's not
or do
like
you-
comics. Like I feel most at home with comics. I'm an animal. I just blurt out crazy things. These are like better women than me. Like they run a tight ship, like a lot of them are like nurses and they know how to like fold a fitted sheet. I'm like an animal. I'm a comic, like so and definitely often like one of the only Jews in the room for sure. But we have that weird thing in common too. That we're both pretty annoyed with our husbands. No, but we both have the same risk and that same life. So it's like, in a weird way, I also connect to them in a way I don't anybody else.
Didn't Louis start to really take off
when he talked about his kids?
when he started talking about more personal matters?
Yes, I think so because Louis used to be kind of a little bit more absurdist, a little bit more Attell-esque. Not to say they were similar, but Louis was more of an absurdist kind of a comic.
Yeah.
And he became more of a personal comic, I think, when he started talking about his kids.
Yeah.
And he's saying his kids are assholes or whatever he was saying.
Yeah.
And I do think that was a turning point for him. So I guess the analogy you're making is, could this be a turning point for Rachel? Well, we don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, it definitely gives me a lot
Rachel's always been personal.
of material.
So it's not that Rachel's all of a sudden becoming personal. She's always been personal.
But this specific world crashing into my world, you saw it at my wedding. It is just like hilarious. A lot of it has nothing to do with me. I got a good, nice chunk there when they came. Just the firemen at the wedding. It was just like my loud Jew comic friends being hilarious. And then like some fireman like grabbed the mic at the end of the night. He's like, Trump 2020, just like fell softly into the carpet on his face. Like it was just a shit show, And they're all over my house buying Bitcoin. We have a house because of Bitcoin. We bought a Bitcoin house. Like it's just so much shit going on.
You made money in Bitcoin?
That's how we bought a house because Pete bought Bitcoin in like 2016 that we bought a house with. But there's always some guy over buying crypto for Pete, talking about this is what the government doesn't want us to be doing right now. And I'm like, you work for the government. You're a government worker. They're like, that's what they want you to think. So it's a lot. Like I get a lot from all of the. They're giving me a lot of material for sure.
But before we go, Dan,
I just think we should say a word about Steve King, who was the head of security here at the Comedy Cellar. He was the doorman. We've seen him. How long has he been here? 20 years?
more 20.
Well, I've been seeing him for however long, sitting there. Very nice guy. Everybody loved him. And he died suddenly yesterday morning, November 1st, of causes, I guess, unknown. But they did a GoFundMe for him, which raised, I think they're at $100,000 for his family.
That's what I heard. I was at $100,000 already, yeah, which is great.
He was the funniest, loveliest guy. He was just always smiling. It's so insane that he's not going to be sitting there on that chair.
I know.
He always puts his hand up like I'm not allowed in. Does he do the same thing to you? Yeah. He always blocks me from the door like, like I'm an audience member. He's just always silly, always in the best mood, playful, so proud of his kids. He's a true mensch. He was a true mensch. I can't believe it's like past tense.
Well, were you close to him, Noam? I know he worked for you for many, many years. I don't know if you had a personal relationship.
Yeah,
with him.
of course. I wouldn't say we were close, but we had a more than a professional relationship. We had a personal relationship. Absolutely.
What do you think about these GoFundMes generally as a way to? Why are you looking at me weird, Rachel?
No, nothing. I don't know.
Do you think this is the best way to go about, I don't know, helping the family or
Well, I don't ever recall people raising $100,000 for families of people who died before GoFundMe.
Pretty fast, pretty effective.
So yeah, I would say it's very good.
And when people pass away, it leaves a host of sudden problems for families, like practical problems that families are hard for them to think about when they're grieving.
Used to be somebody would die, we'd have like a function
Right, would
at
people
the
ever-
lobby memorial and would
Yeah.
raise a few $1,000s, but this is a very good use of technology. It's GoFundMe.
And comedians loved him so much. So it's
Everybody loved him. This is a guy everybody
him.
loved.
Yeah, you're right.
He was a special guy.
Everybody loved him. He was just
And some comedians were very generous. I don't want to say the names, but I think there's even more to come. But
Well, I was not that generous. Because I didn't know what to donate. And so I was
Well,
one of the early.
more.
What's
His
that?
family listens to it. I feel like I don't.
Dan, that is the worst excuse for not being generous I've ever heard. I wanted to be,
But I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know
what to do, so I gave
didn't know.
less.
First of all, I didn't know. I didn't know what being generous meant in that context. For you know,
Somebody gave 25,000.
yeah. But what? Who, was that you?
No, I don't know who it was. I'm just saying somebody gave
Everybody
25,000.
assumes it's you.
I thought it was you.
No, I
Because you're known for being very generous.
I'm not. I'm not donating to the GoFundMe. I'm doing mine on the side.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
But maybe that could have been your answer as to, I asked you if GoFundMe was the best mechanism, and you said yes, it was. But now you're saying you're not using it.
Well, I'm his employer.
It's a different situation.
Yeah,
Well, but that's what I was wondering, whether you think giving it directly to the family or
I
putting in some
don't think
sort-
that matters. But I'm saying that without the GoFundMe,
Right.
this money wouldn't be raised.
No, the GoFundMe is amazing.
Right, but if you have the
No, you can just-
opportunity
you
to
just
give
give them a check
directly,
and say,
whether it would be knowing where the money's going, putting in a fund.
Who cares where the money's going? Why is that for us to decide? Like, let the money go wherever.
No, I have to say, I had a situation where I gave a big chunk of change to something like this, and that money just got taken and just blown, not at all for the helpful purpose that I had given it, and I resent it to this day. But that's so.
What was it?
I don't know, but there is something when you give people access to a big amount of money, they can be irresponsible with it.
Okay, but that's your choice. If you,
But also, where you're not
that's-
giving it to
No.
the family, you're giving it to the director of the GoFundMe. You have to trust that person.
We trust that person, but I'm saying like the idea of putting something in a fund or an annuity or whatever it is. This is not an unwise thing to do.
It's pretty safe.
But
it's
you know,
not, it's not a new it's like Venmo. In terms,
It's not
in terms of
Bitcoin.
getting to the family. That step is pretty direct.
But the family needs money up front. That's for sure. This is such a tragic story. It's hard for me to talk about, tell you the truth. But it's fantastic that he got $100,000.
Well, what I was saying earlier is because I was one of the first people to give, I just didn't know what
Well,
the amount.
you can give twice.
I did.
You can go back and
Okay, but I didn't know why are you covering your mouth? How do I know what the right amount to give is? It turned out,
I think Kanye has a song about this.
as it turns out, first of all, they got the $100,000 that they were looking for. If I knew that they needed, if I knew that they needed more money,
Please, kid, you cut that out.
no, I don't understand. You're making a mountain out of a big deal out of a rational question. What people gave, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
The average comedian,
Dan.
the most common amount the comedian gave was $100. That's the most common amount.
Did you go through all of them?
Listen. One thing about
Would you have just guessed that amount
Dan.
out of thin air
Dan.
without knowing beforehand?
Dan, one thing about
Yeah.
our community.
Yeah.
There's people of wildly different means
Right.
that all sit at the comedian table. There are 100 millionaires sitting with people
With no health insurance.
sitting with people who are scraping together rent.
Mm-hmm.
So you give what you can. That's
Whatever you give
It's meaningful
is-
based
yeah.
on what somebody can. People stretch it for things like that. So that's like a.
Also, you give based on your relationship with that. I mean, you could give
Right.
You can give money to that. You can give money
but
to
again-
cancer. You nobody should judge where you want. If you have excess money to give to help people,
Right.
God forbid, the person that I love who died may not be your priority. That's none of anybody's business.
That is all true.
Yeah.
But I still had to come up with a number that I felt was could
So
I?
let me tell you this. Last night I went.
But in any case,
Last night I went to a fundraiser with Dara Godfrey, Gilbert's wife, right? And there were people donating to this cause, and they were donating it on their phone, and it was going on a big screen, so everybody could see how much people donated. So some people were giving $3,600, and some people were giving $180.
This is very Jewish.
it's very Jewish.
Yeah, it was. It was
Jews
all
give a
multiple-
multiple of 18. For those of you who don't know,
I'm impressed that
Because it-
Periel knew these were multiples of 18.
because it's considered good. 18 is a good luck in Judaism.
But so Dara said that Dara invited me to go with her. I was basically her date, and she said that she really wanted to donate in Gilbert's name, but she knew that he probably wouldn't have wanted her
She
to
didn't want to
do
insult
that.
him.
That is the funniest thing I've ever.
Because he's so cheap.
So I said we should donate $1.80. That would go up.
well, you could donate all of Gilbert's shampoo.
Right. I'm just saying it's not about the amount of money. The fact that you thought to give is really, I think, what's important. I wouldn't get-
My grandma Rhoda Schneider one of the sexiest women alive, and she was. She used to work for. She was Faye Dunaway's secretary, and she would always give me her clothes. She would just steal.
Faye
from
Dunaway?
Yeah.
That's
Oh wait,
kind
it's
of
her
a-
sister, my aunt Edith Schneider. Edith Schneider. Yeah. And I would
That's
always
ama-
get something that used to be Faye Dunaway's. I believe
That's
she stole from her.
amazing.
That
And-
belonged to Faye. And I'm like, well, then it wasn't really yours to give to me. She would rewrap it for Hanukkah.
The all the cliche things are true. You really do need to take care of your health, and we've known, especially me, because I've between the musicians and the comedians, I've known way too many people already in my lifetime who've dropped dead. And I hate to say mostly black men, but there is a commonality among all the people I've known who have died, and one of them is really just not heeding
Do you think
the actual risk factors
is it
of your
that
life.
is it that these people didn't have adequate health coverage, or they just
Yes,
were
that-
not, or they just were not?
Oh, no,
Another
no,
thing,
no.
there's so many other
Well, no.
aspects that go into that.
But no, in the cases that you've articulated, is the issue health insurance, or is the issue just non-compliance with doctors' orders?
I would be surprised if it was health insurance in any of the situations.
Well, wait a second.
I know personally, and for most of them, I know specifically that it wasn't. It was not being responsible.
Well, don't you think that if your friend Wig had had adequate access
He
to
refused to
health,
take-
like mental health,
He refused to take his meds.
but he also
But that's mental illness. You can't even judge it either way. But it wasn't because he didn't have access. The government let him down in other
There's
ways.
also so many other complicated factors
Yeah.
and exhaustion and family history and balance of all those things that can affect your life, work. and
Well, it's
family.
certainly not a bad idea to take care of your health.
No, everybody should take care of their health. It's just such a complicated thing.
it's
People are-
also a luxury to be able to take care of your health.
Yeah,
to
that's
some
what I meant by,
degree.
like,
Pe-
yeah,
pe-
by
Rachel,
exhaustion,
it
working.
says something very important. People are born with vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Some people are extremely overweight, and that's not because they're lazy people. They have a propensity to be huge, and
I mean, look at COVID. Look at the disparity you saw there by people's experiences. Some people were dancing with their families in matching outfits. Other people were on the
yeah.
street.
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that we as humans, you can look it up and you can read that, based on your particular profile, you have a much higher risk of something happening to you. But people don't think it will happen to them. That's really what I'm saying. Like you have to respect, your own statistical profile and take that seriously. And we all I think I'm never going to die. Sometimes I try to convince myself, no, you're going to die. I'm like, no, I'm never going to die. I'm like,
That's good. I don't have a fear of death either. I'm worried more if people are mad at me than about dying.
Well, I think Noam's going to go till in his 90s. I certainly hope so.
I don't think about people are like, you don't fear it. I'm like, I mean, I know it's going to happen, but I'm much more worried if somebody's mad at me.
Yeah,
That's what I think about in the weird hours of the night.
I try not
no.
to. I don't.
I just
assume
overanalyze
people
a
are mad
small
at me.
social exchange. What do you say? You assume people are mad at you?
I know people are mad at me. And
But the difference is he doesn't really care.
I
wish
care.
I
Of course I
didn't
care.
care.
But nothing I can do about it. I can't help myself. But I really do not want to die. Like I just find it intolerable.
It's a hard thing to think about. Reincarnation is somewhat calming for me, or like that I could go be somebody else with another fun-loving life. But I don't care.
Or you could be somebody else, but a horrible life. I mean, if you look at all the people that have ever walked the earth, how many of them would you like to be? And the choices are quite limited.
This is a perfect way to end this podcast. Why?
Look at all the
Good
people.
evening, friends.
Look at all the people that have ever lived, and how many of those lives would you enjoy living? And
No, that's why when anybody like will like do like a past life or some sort of thing, when everybody starts talking like that, I have a friend that's like into that stuff, and she's like, you were Joan of Arc. I'm like, what are the odds? I was a serf. I was definitely a jester that was
was
in
a
trouble,
whore.
probably. Yeah.
Well, you could have
Or
been.
perhaps.
You could have been burned as a witch. You could have been.
I definitely would have been burned. Oh my God, I would have been burned every day for the shit I talk. I would
You were
have
a
been,
jester.
They would have burned.
You could have died, and
Immediately.
you could have just died at been stillborn.
They would
your
have put
past
me in
life.
for the things they used to burn women alive for.
For
I
sure.
definitely would have been burned.
I
Like,
would have
day
been
2.
burned alive.
Yeah.
I definitely would have been burned alive. That's
Well,
a good idea
maybe
for
that's
a Halloween
and that's
costume,
probably why you
too.
married a firefighter, because in your past life you got burned at the stake.
That is an even better way.
That's a great
My
idea for
daughter is-
Halloween.
Oh my God.
Burnt at the stake.
So we should just say
Fun-loving costume.
Periel went as a vagina for
It was
Halloween.
horrible.
I went as pro-choice.
Well, it was a vagina.
It was a vagina.
A vag?
But my 9-year-old thought I was a hot dog.
What? How did you settle on being a vag for Halloween?
And you think, so I went as a penis. My 9-year-old thought I was a hot dog. No, I went as a vagina. My 9-year-old
Well,
thought I was a hot
It
dog.
looked like a hot
Like
dog in a bun.
it
and,
looked
and literally went,
Oh,
ugh,
ugh.
that's horrific.
You
That's
look
horrific.
So sad too. You don't look happy about being a vagina. You have kind of a low-grade depression expression.
it was great.
I wouldn't have known that was
Yeah, I don't know.
vagina.
I would have known.
Like a hot dog. It definitely looks like.
I would have known because it's fucking Periel, and everything she does is a vagina. Her that was a symbol for her comedy show. was
you
a vagina.
vag-centric, Periel?
Just don't tell me you modeled it on your own vagina. That's all.
Oh my God.
It was a great costume because it was also yeah, it felt like I could go around saying that I was pro-choice, which felt like, I was happy to do that. But Noam said that I could have easily been pro-life in that costume. And
Because pro-life people like to have those big signs with smush babies on them. So it
Right.
could be a smush baby, honestly.
Wasn't that like the vagina hat was a symbol of pro-choice, right?
the pink hat.
Yeah, wasn't that?
Oh, wait, put it back for a second, Nicole, because I realize what's throwing me off.
What?
You would think that the hole where the head is coming out of would be the vagina hole, because that's but that's not. So it's like there's it's
Right.
it's
I wouldn't think
confusing.
that. I would
But
think that's just so we could know that she could cross the street
But
without
that would
getting
be
hit.
a fun way to do it, but it would be a trickier.
you should have been coming out of the vagina
You know
hole.
that there's more
to be,
than one hole in a vagina, right?
There's 2, right? Or is it 3? I'm just kidding. No, there's
You should have been coming out of the birth canal.
Okay.
birth canal would be where the person would come out.
You should have been coming out of the birth canal.
Wait, but where is the birth
dead.
canal? Is it in the middle?
Yeah,
It's
I don't
in
even
the
know.
middle.
I should know.
It should
and I had a
be
baby.
next year. It's going to be that with a hanger and a bloody baby head.
Aww.
Aw.
Well, I think you should just go with a nurse or a cat.
A Catholic schoolgirl. That was good.
But I don't know
Well,
why
my
you're trying.
Frankie's downstairs. My daughter. I probably should.
Oh, I want to go see Frankie. Nicole, any thoughts on the vagina costume?
I'm a fan. It did look like it was sort of falling apart, though. Which
A
is
little
a little
bit.
bit of a question.
Well-
She's
The
not as young-
labia.
not as young as she used to be.
The inner labia. All right.
Podcast at comedycellar.com
She had a kid.
for your suggestions, comments, critiques. Thank you, Rachel Feinstein. Rachel Feinstein at, I don't know.
Rachel Feinstein _ is my Instagram, but you can go to rachel-feinstein.com. It's my website for my dates and stuff.
All right. Thank you so much.
you.
Bye-bye.
And all you firefighters out there, thank you for your service.